Geetha sadhana soapaana we have been seeing. So today in that we shall continue with the necessity of discrimination or buddhi and devotion, bhakti, in the perfection of yoga siddhi. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Another factor for consideration is that for reaching the culmination of the siddhi of yoga, the association of buddhi is most essential. There should be no conflict in understanding the term buddhi as a discriminating intellect. The association with which is assured to cut the bondage of karma, and karma not coupled with the buddhi is said to be inferior. Yoga karmasu kaushalam. So without kaushala, it is inferior, that karma. A correct appreciation of verse 2.49 Bhagavad Gita is profitable in this connection. Every man acts guided by his innate nature, avashaho, karma, prakritiyair gunaihi, which he has inherited from his past actions. Thus, all actions proceed without any pre-thinking. Therefore, it would seem correct to assume that actions normally are carried on without first hankering for the results. On the contrary, when the karma is undertaken, if we are anticipating the fruit thereof, not only will such an attitude destroy the value of the karma, but we can say that the person loses his human nature, being overcome with greed. What this means is that the performance of the action itself should be sufficient satisfaction. But if in addition to that one would hanker after the result of the the person would be demanding a second payment for the act. Performing the action itself should be enjoyable, not the result. So it will be the second payment for the act. This is the greed, that is, you should do any action with the enjoyment. That's only the result getting you at that time only, doing that action. So this is the greed that is being referred to. If you demand for the result again, that is greed. Those who engage themselves in karma with an eye on the results are said to be the wretched ones. Bhagavad Gita says, Kripanaha phalahetavaha. Arjuna has earlier told the Lord that he has lost his nature because of this defect of wretchedness. Karpanyadoshopahatasvabhavaha. Hence, the Lord's injunction to him is that he should have recourse to buddhi, discriminative wisdom. On the contrary, when karma is undertaken with the mind glued to the results, one can never hope to reach samadhi, the inward turning of the mind toward Atman, as opposed to the normally extroverted and externally oriented mind. However, this term buddhi should not be confused with a mere mental exercise, which anybody endowed with a certain amount of the intellectual acuteness can do and would require no special stress from the Lord on the need for specific qualifications. This buddhi, the discriminative faculty of the mind, is normally shrouded because of our preoccupation with ourselves and with the world outside. Instead, if the efforts are directed towards the Lord, He unmasks or releases this capacity of intuitive discrimination. Unless this grace of the Lord descends on us, the capacity to discriminate between the good and the evil, right and wrong, the eternal and the transient, the real and the illusory, and the ultimately self and the non self, will not be in our grasp. This type of buddhi can be kindled only by the performance of karma in the splendid attitude of worshipping the Lord. When the attachment to the karma and its results all drop away, when karma is undertaken in this exalted fashion, karmas both bad as well as good cease to be a cause of bondage. This dexterity this dexterity in karma is called yoga. Yoga karmasu kaushalam. The second aspect, which has been ignored by many and decreed by a few, is the place of devotion in the acquisition of buddhi yoga. Devotion in the acquisition of buddhi yoga. In That's as promised in 10:10 of Bhagavad Gita. These are those persons who are continuously in yoga and who serve the Lord with love, entitled themselves for being endowed with this type of buddhi. Without complete devotion, undistracted even to the extent of allowing the mind to wander to the day to day needs of life, inasmuch as the Lord had already assured Arjuna that he himself would provide all that was needed. Yogakshemam vahamyaham. And hoping to equip oneself and buddhi yoga is oneself with the buddhi yoga is like the desire of a lame person desiring to leap across the ocean. The essence of buddhi yoga is continuous discrimination between the self and the not self. Unless the utterly illusory nature of samsara and the authority of the Lord are realized, running after sense objects and pleasures will not cease, and not self will never be gotten rid of. Every person's mind is always oriented naturally toward the small I, which involves everything other than the real I. Therefore, for the mind to rest on the real I, everything that is really not the I, but which is normally accepted as the real I, must be ruthlessly rejected. This can happen only when the dream nature of these elements constituting the non I is realized as such, thus weaning the mind away from them and allowing the mind to rest in God with devotion. This devotion, coupled with discriminative introspection, will serve as a direct aid in knowing God as He is, which will, with no time lag, and unite the person to Him eternally. This is confirmed also in the last verse of chapter 6, where the best among yogis is declared to be the one who serves the Lord with faith. So, next 1.8, conclusion regarding yoga. We hope that the above discussion makes it clear that the word yoga, when used without any qualifying prefix, refers to the naishkarmya, actionlessness, except where the context evidently demands a different meaning. 2 points have been declared as being pivotal for the attainment of actionlessness. The first is that the passivity will not lead to actionlessness. Naishkarmya. The obvious reason being that passivity, being the cause of tamas, jada, will take the person away from knowledge. Not, Nor can one reach the culmination of Naishkarmya by merely dropping karmas before reaching the stage when their performance becomes immaterial and inconsequential. Hence, contrary to the apparent literal meaning, the real import of Naishkarmya or sannyasa, renunciation, is the performance of karma with absolutely no attachment, so that even while karma is in progress, no feeling of agency for it arises in the person. Both non commencement of karma as well as the giving up of karma constitute confused and deceitful conduct, since not a minute passes without a person having to perform the bodily functions. And worse still, even when the functional senses are quiet, the mind may be furiously active. So, continued action alone, nirantara karma, in conjunction with discrimination, buddhi, viveka, can lead to the state of non action, nishkarmya, as opposed to merely withdrawing from action. The second point is to understand the necessity of devotion to the Lord at all stages of the activity, starting from the volition to do an action right up to the point of enjoying the fruit of that action. A complete detachment is imperative, and this becomes possible only when the karma is performed as worship to the Lord. This shows that performing karma not anticipating the result, which is known as nishkama karma, not desiring the fruit of the karma, is not the same as the Naishkarmya actionlessness. Though, for various reasons, some later commentators have tried to establish such an identity. By not desiring the fruit of the karma, one is prevented from losing one's nature as a human being and becoming what the Lord calls karpanyam, wretched. But the result of the actions will still have to be gone through, whether they are performed with the desire for the fruit or not. In contrast to performing an action without a desire for that fruit, Naishkarmya karma takes away even the result of the action, because now the sense of agency has left, and therefore that kartrutva has been left. Even the idea of taking rebirth of the enjoyment of that karma, that's bhoktrutva, is out of the question when the kartrutva has gone. The insistence is therefore on the absence in the mind of any identification with the action or the fruit of it, rather than the mere physical renunciation of action. It should be clear that the emphasis is on the freedom from the involvement of the mind while the functional senses continue to act. The withdrawal of senses from activity while the mind continues to be active is declared to be hypocrisy. As long as the sense objects are present, the senses are bound to run after them, dragging the mind outward. So, it is by means of the mind alone that either the senses have to be delinked from the mind, so that the channels feeding it will be dried up as the objects withdraw. Or the senses themselves are to be kept under control. The former is attempted by the discrimination that a particular guna, quality, in the sense organ seeks its counterpart in the object, which is natural for it. That being so, there is no need for us to get involved in the process at all. The latter is accomplished by the control of detaching the senses from their objects. There is little doubt that no one is free from the drive to seek happiness, though individually each may differ about the connotation of and the expectation from the word happiness. Nobody need deny that an ordinary person seeking happiness in sense objects does in fact enjoy himself when the object sought is secured. But a little reflection by a discriminating person will show that it is not in the nature of these objects to provide lasting happiness, since that type of happiness is neither uniform at all times to the same person nor universal to all persons to the same extent. Effort is needed to acquire that type of happiness, and what is secured will have to be protected, because the fear of losing it will be constantly eating into the mind. When that happiness is lost or exhausted, the resulting unhappiness becomes obvious. So, while sense objects may appear to produce happiness, in reality, that type of happiness is no happiness at all. In fact, the happiness derived from the sense objects is declared in the Geetha to be the very womb of unhappiness. The control of mind is therefore essential for one pursuing yoga, because as long as the mind is being dragged outward in 1,000 directions of desires by desires, equanimity is impossible. Without equipoise, yoga is unattainable. One can thus understand the anguish or pain of Arjuna when he admits to the Lord that he sees no way of maintaining stability in yoga that has been taught in the form of equanimity. Hence, the only way to attain yoga is to take the mind away from the worldly desires and to immerse it in and pickle it with devotion to the Lord. In the ninth chapter, there is the mention of great souls, Mahatmas, who, knowing the indestructible God, the cause of all beings, worship with one pointedness. They constantly sing about Him, submit to Him with unswerving devotion, and are constantly united with Him through yoga. The Lord declares some worship Him through Jnana Yoga, Jnana Yajna, the sacrifice of knowledge as the one Brahman. Others adopting some single substitute for Him do their worship, and still others worship him in manifold ways. In some places, there is a clear injunction to perform karma, while in other places, the karmas are decreed as not helpful for attaining samadhi, equanimity of mind. In some places, attaining Brahmaloka, the world of the Creator, is praised, while in other places, knowing God is said to be said to be the cause of the final freedom from birth, thus rejecting any other higher achievement, like attaining Brahmaloka also, etc. And again, in some other places, there is an indication that God alone can put one across the ocean of samsara. At some places, the text seems to indicate that liberation can result while living, and in other places, it seems to indicate that it results after casting off the body. That is Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti. With regard to the above seeming contradictions, it should be noted that all of our previous actions, their fruits in the form of the present body, etc., are referred to as prarabdha karma, agency, as well as the experience of the fruits of action, are all things that one is aware of and therefore cannot be one's true nature. This conclusion rests on the experiential fact that the subject of experience cannot be the object of that experience. Subject cannot be the object. Those who have associated themselves with nature, Prakriti, the ignorant people, identify the so called wise man with the collection of the body, mind, etc., with which he has attained his wisdom. While before this state, even the wise man was aware of the collection of the body, senses, mind, ego, etc., but after the dawn of wisdom, he is no longer even aware of them. Since there is only one self, there is nothing other than him to be aware of. Nobody remains as perceiver, nor are there any instruments of knowledge with which he could be aware of something. Just as a person is aware of his waking body and its life functions that are going on before going to sleep, he is not aware of the body or its functions during his sleep, even though they continue from the point of view of those still awake. This is the true meaning of Naishkarmya, the true meaning of the one yoga taught in the Geetha, Naishkarmya yoga. So, next we shall consider in the next session examination of Karma yoga. So, Naishkarmya yoga we have seen, Karma yoga we shall see in the next session. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Sadguru Charanarpitamastu, Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavantu Lokaha Samastha Sukhino Bhavantu, Sajjana Santu Nirbhayaha, Om Tat Sat, Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.